This is not a planned video, and I don't really have time to set it up, or even to edit it, really. So apologies in advance. But there is an issue that I've been meaning to talk about for a while, and was presented with the opportunity to do so today. And that issue is navigating feelings of shame and guilt in early, very early sobriety. So, brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, welcome to Bad Country. So, somebody posted a comment in the reply section of my most recent video, and it was only a couple of hours ago. And from that reply, I could tell that this person was really struggling. I've become quite good, quite intuitive at recognizing where somebody is on their journey of sobriety or recovery just from the replies on my videos. I can just tell from only a couple of sentences when somebody is on the cusp of making a very, very good decision towards sobriety, or making a very, very bad decision towards relapse. And I can tell when somebody is at that crossroads, and this person is. And I can tell when somebody is lying to themselves, and this person is not. This person is standing at that crossroads and is telling the truth, perhaps for the first time. The commenter is a serviceman and has been going through a cycle of relapse, sobriety, relapse and sobriety, just like I did. But they're having a lot of trouble pushing through the initial wall of negative emotion, of shame, of self-loathing, of guilt and of embarrassment. How do we navigate that? And to quote the person who left the comment specifically, how do you deal with the guilt and the shame, the self-hatred, the self-loathing, and everything else that comes with early sobriety? And I wanted to talk about that for a long time, but I've just never got round to it. And I have an hour today before I leave, so fuck it. Let's just screw the schedule. Let's just do it right now. So when the sheer weight of the guilt and shame of alcoholism is so heavy, is too heavy to bear, how do we handle that in early sobriety? After all, when you dry out in that very first period of sobriety after the withdrawal, you suddenly have to face the knowledge that all you've done for the past decade or so is burn things down and push people away. In sobriety, you have to come to terms with the fact that you did that. And that is incredibly difficult. And at the same time, you know that another bottle would wash those feelings away. Alcoholism in that stage is still actively trying to trick you back to the bottle with offers of an easy solution. In the face of all that, how do we choose and then stick to the more difficult path? Sobriety. Big questions, and I have answers. I think if I was a normal YouTuber, I would just take one of those questions and put it in ChatGPT and then just read the response to you. And that would be my job done. And then I would, I don't know, offer you 10% off of NordVPN and advise you to try mindfulness or something. And that's all fine. That is all legitimate advice. But that's not my style. So I'm going to tell you really, truly, precisely, just a few things that I do day to day to deal with those feelings of shame and guilt and self-loathing. Very early sobriety feels shitty. It just does. In that period, alcoholism will dangle your past behavior right in front of you with one hand, and it will offer you a drink with the other in the hope that you'll take it to allow the alcoholism back in, because it doesn't want you to leave. And it's a cruel trick. It is a cruel, manipulative trick. Alcoholism deliberately makes you feel bad because it knows that then you are weak. Good. You should feel bad. You should feel bad and you should feel shitty because you did bad and shitty things. And so far, as of this moment, you haven't really begun the work of setting those things right. In the eyes of the world, the only change you've made right now is that you put down the bottle. Your focus right now is on yourself, and that's right for now. Your focus rightly is on staying sober. The rest of it can wait. Repairing the damage, it can wait. For now, you are right to be focused on yourself, on taking it one day at a time and maintaining your sobriety, buying another day of sobriety every day. But in order for you to begin repairing things and beginning to address what it is that's causing you to feel that guilt and that shame, it's completely rational to feel bad because, and I hate to be the one to say this, but for a long time, you've been kind of a prick. That's why you feel bad. It's because you were an asshole. It's reasonable to feel bad because of that. It's reasonable to be embarrassed. I hear sobriety people talk about just forget the shame, you shouldn't feel guilty, don't have regrets, man, stop living in the past, just manifest happiness, man. But this is the real world. And while all of that stuff sounds very positive and very constructive in a TikTok, out here in the real world where people are complex, it is not possible for us to flick on a switch that says self-love. Saying that you need to love yourself is true, but it's also easier said than done. And for a while, you are going to feel shame and guilt. And that's right, that is an appropriate feeling. It's vastly exaggerated by alcoholism and withdrawal, but it is an appropriate response. Don't try to stamp it out. Don't try to avoid it. Regret is good. It shows that you've grown. The capacity for regret is important because it allows you to look back on your previous behavior and say, I don't want to be like that. That's what regret is. All of my guilt and all of my shame is attached to how I treated other people. It's linked to other people's perception in that period, or it's linked directly to how I know I made other people feel. That is what's shameful to me. The act of putting the alcohol, the process of consuming the alcohol, that's not where the shame comes from. That's nothing. But I feel guilty about the effect that simple process had on all the people around me, people I cared about, and complete strangers. I feel shame for the harm that I caused my loved ones, and I feel absolutely profound embarrassment when I think about how strangers saw me. And I still carry those negative feelings every day. I haven't tried to soothe them away. It put so much stress on my parents in the later stages of their lives that my mother is sick, partially as a result. My alcoholism shortened my mother's life. There's no ambiguity about that, I am certain. They won't tell me that's the case, but it is. And I deserve to feel bad about that forever. And no amount of meditation or TikTok inspiration porn is gonna mend that. And I'm okay with that. I was horrible, and I feel bad about that. And I deserve to feel bad about that. And that's not self-flagellation, and it's not emotional masochism, and it's not martyrdom, and it's not a subtle or manipulative trick to earn your consolation. It is simply true. It is true that I did a bad thing and that I feel bad about it. There are consequences of our shitty behavior, and feeling bad is a completely rational response. And the trick is to be able to accept that and to be okay with a small part of you forever feeling bad. The damage is done, and in time, it will feel less bad. What matters is a commitment to preventing it getting worse. And that really is how I handle shame and guilt in my day-to-day life. I don't try to wash it away, and I don't pay a therapist to tell me it's not my fault. I face it. And I recognize the same person that's sitting in this chair today, whose parents today beam with pride at my progress, is the same person who told them to go fuck themselves when they were trying to save my life. The same guy who today devotes a lot of very rewarding time to helping other people in early sobriety is the same person who forced his girlfriend out of his apartment so that she had to go and seek a room in a Salvation Army hostel. It was a different version of me. It was an altered version of me, but it was me. And to try to pretend that I don't feel bad about it, and pretend that I can just mindfulness it away like a Jedi hand wave, is, I think, grossly disrespectful to the people that I affected. No, for me, in sobriety, it has been more fulfilling, more rewarding, more successful a strategy to instead accept that I did those terrible things and understand that since I had the power to do them, the power is also within me to make things right again, eventually. And it's a painful process. Sometimes it means feeling shitty all over again, as the people that you're making things right to tell you to your face how your behavior affected them. That is brutal. It is a brutal process and a necessary one. It hurts a lot. It hurts a lot. But in the end, it's a good pain, like a purging fire. Let it hurt. I'm a bottler of emotions. I think like a lot of straight white men my age. I'm 24. If there's a problem, or if I'm feeling bad, or feeling depressed, I usually won't do anything about it until it reaches a point of critical mass, and then it all emerges all at once. In the past, that emergence has manifested as an alcoholic relapse. And in very early sobriety, those negative feelings, well, they're most of what you're going to feel for a while. You're going to feel bottled up, like too much pressure inside you, and you need to open a valve. And it's tempting to allow alcohol to be that valve. In the past, I might have snuck a drink. And if I sneak one, then I'm sneaking all of them. As a good friend in the emails said to me the other day, it's like dropping a Mento into a Pepsi bottle. Thank you for that analogy, Steve. It is extremely accurate. So in sobriety, I deal with that kind of build-up of pressure by literally venting it with exercise. I go to the gym, I lift up the heavy things, or I punch the bag, or I go and ride my bike an absurd distance. And every time I do that, I get a little bit better, measurably. I get a fraction stronger, or a degree faster. And in that way, I exorcise stress and shame and guilt. And I see the progress when I look in the mirror. And when I look down at that puddle of sweat between my feet, what I see is a little bit of the old me leaving my body. And when I'm on my bike and it's raining and it's cold and I hate it and I'm cursing myself for not staying in bed, I know there is a little bit of the old me being left on the road behind me. And I don't give a fuck if it's a cliche that sober people get super fit. Some cliches are cliches because they are accurate. Exercise helps. And as your own self-esteem begins to rise and your own energy levels begin to restore themselves, you'll notice that those feelings of shame and guilt start to recede. Exercise is self-care. And again, for a lot of straight white men my age, it's the only kind of self-care we're any good at. Because if you let in a little bit of self-care in that way, you have to let out a little bit of self-loathing to make space. And as you begin to learn to care for yourself again, you'll find that you have the capacity to care for others too. And that is a sign to others that you are ready to start making things right. That will all help to eventually assuage feelings of guilt and shame until they are manageable. Another genuine technique that I use is negative visualization. And it's a weird one. It's poached from a system of philosophy that I follow slightly. And I'll maybe pull that into a separate video at some point in the future, because it is an interesting and, to me, an effective strategy. Negative visualization. It's a technique, essentially, of imagining the bad things that might happen to us if we were to continue drinking, and understanding how much or how little control we have over that process. This is not a new thing. It's just a posh name for something that exists in recovery already. AA calls it playing the tape out. That is a form of negative visualization. Imagine yourself now that you're sober and you have an urge to drink. Imagine everything that you have right now. Imagine all of your problems as they currently are. Now imagine yourself having taken that drink a month from now, a week from now. Are those problems going to be better? Do you think you'll be in a better position if you drink today? Are all of your problems going to be magically solved while you're sitting, feeling sorry for yourself at the bottom of a bottle of whiskey? No. That is playing the tape out. And that is negative visualization. Just as visualization can work positively, positive visualization in which you imagine yourself overcoming some obstacle, it can also work the other way. Negative visualization can prevent you from making a bad decision, or it can allow you to be more prepared when you have an alcoholic urge. Negative visualization, in those terms, like imagining things that could go wrong in your life, it sounds like a pessimistic system. And I suppose it is in a sense. But really, it's about gratitude. Negative visualization is a process of becoming grateful for whatever it is you have right now, even if it's bad, because there is no problem that alcohol cannot make worse. It's a practice, it's a technique that you should actively practice. So 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes every few days, take the time to sit down alone and try to absorb all of the negative things that you are feeling in that moment. And then imagine how much worse it would be if you opened a bottle. Another thing to try is apologizing. Not making amends. That will come much later in your journey to long-term sobriety. I'm talking about saying sorry. It's about recognizing here and now that when you're being a bit of a dick, you should say sorry for it. Even if you feel justified. Part of dealing with the shame and the guilt that I accrued over my years of drinking is in building my life and behaving in a way that doesn't promote more shame and guilt. That is to say, trying to be a better person. And I was a complete selfish prick when I was drinking. But getting sober didn't turn me into Mother Teresa overnight. I'm still an asshole sometimes, and I can still be grumpy and spiky and selfish. And I can still say mean things when I'm stressed or tired. Because it's the same person underneath the sobriety as it was underneath the alcoholism. It's the same person. Those two trapdoors lead to the same basement. And saying sorry on a small scale to people in your everyday life for any kind of minor infraction, even if you think your behavior was justified, especially when it's about something that doesn't really matter in the long run, saying sorry to somebody demonstrates that you have some empathy with them and that you see them as another human being. It's just really good practice. It's good practice for when you eventually actually make amends to some of the people you more seriously wronged. But mostly because it teaches humility. It teaches humility, and that is a foreign concept to us when we are in active addiction. And you'll find that also coaches in a process of forgiveness, of accepting forgiveness from other people. As much as I am a firm believer that negative feelings about your past behavior are necessary for sobriety, you should also be able to forgive yourself in time. I didn't say excuse, I said forgive. It is very possible to feel bad about a thing you did, but also to forgive yourself for it. You have to firmly entrench yourself in the idea of personal responsibility to get to that place. That despite the alcoholism being a serious illness that was affecting you, you still have some responsibility for your behavior during it. That is, I think, the position that I've got myself to, and that feels like I'm confident in that position. It allows me to feel bad, but also to forgive myself. It's important to understand that you did shitty things, but you were partially compelled to do them by a condition that is partially beyond your control. In that admission, what you're saying is, I did a thing that was bad, and although it was partially out of my control, I have a responsibility to prevent it from happening again. Then you can begin to forgive yourself. Not all in one go. You haven't earned a blanket of forgiveness to be thrown over you for all of your past behavior, but step by step, in increments, you can begin to forgive yourself. And once you've started to forgive yourself, the process becomes exponential. And what I mean by that, if you're in early sobriety right now, this moment, this next part is going to be hard for you to believe. But you'll just have to take my word for it and take the word of the countless of other sober people who I am sure will back me up in the comments section about this. You ready? In time, over and over and over again, you will encounter person after person who's not just willing, but is eager to forgive you. Once those people believe that your commitment to sobriety is real, people will fall over themselves to support you and to forgive you and to tell you it's going to be okay. It happened to me daily in early sobriety. It's astonishing the amount of forgiveness that people have in them, their capacity for forgiveness. I think that alone is why I am alive today. I did and said some gnarly shit, man. Some real gross stuff. I should have been dumped and rejected and ostracized and fired and cut out of the will and God knows what else. All of that, people would have been well within their rights to do all of that stuff. And the moment I showed some true willingness to change that, everybody came right back. All of them, virtually all of them, welcomed me back into their lives. And our friendships and our connections were better for it. And more than that, some of them weren't just willing to forgive, but today are actively proud of me. They saw me at my lowest, and they still have the capacity to be proud of me. I don't know, man. Weird times. Tomorrow, I fly off to go and live on a Mediterranean island in the sun and eat good food and live an exciting life and run a business. And that starts tomorrow. And 5 years ago, I was on the streets of Plymouth drinking the dregs of other people's drinks after the pubs had closed. Or I was strapped to a gurney in a German psych ward, watching insects crawl out of the pores in my skin and believing that the doctors were conspiring against me. It's hard to believe that it's the same person. But it is the same person. And while I never got quite over the shame and the guilt and the self-loathing, those things are still a part of me. The truth is that I have been lucky that my life has changed in the way that it has. But I've also been dedicated, and I've worked hard. And I've discovered that the harder you work, the luckier you seem to be. So, in early sobriety, when that self-loathing and that guilt and embarrassment seems to be overwhelming, and you feel like you'll never feel better, and life isn't worth living, and the answer is more alcohol, recognize that as the lie that it is, because there is a way through it. And it's going to hurt for a while. Don't be afraid of that. You will have to suffer. You will have to suffer those feelings of shame and regret for a while. But then you'll be stronger for it. Meet those feelings head on. Don't allow alcohol to convince you that it can medicate those feelings. Because the truth is, alcohol doesn't want you to leave. Alcoholism needs you more than you need it. Thank you for watching. And as always, good luck out there.